There we go. Welcome, folks, to another of our Academic Honors Program Colloquium Series events. Today, we're very excited to have a student presenter with his faculty mentor, which we'll introduce in just a second. I did want to mention that we have one more Honors Colloquium this semester, which is going to be on the 27th of April. Dr. Greg Hogan in chemistry is presenting It's a Trap: The Capture of Guest Molecules Within a Hydrogen-Bonded Metal Organic Framework. Whether he works in Star Wars or not, I don't know. But hopefully with that quote, he will. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our two presenters for today. I should mention my name is Craig Nakashian, and I am the Director of the Academic Honors Program here at A&M. But our presenters today are Dr. Dana Leighton and Mukunzi Irumva, who are going to be presenting on a multi-site international collaborative study on the hostile priming effect. And I believe this is similar to or the same project that they presented for the Texas Undergraduate Research Day. So very excited to go ahead and see this. Take it away.
Okay, it is the same. Hi, I'm Dana Leighton. I'm a assistant professor in psychology here at A&M Texarkana. And I'm joined by my student, Mukunzi Irumva. Did you want to say hello, Mukunzi?
Hello, everybody.
So I will go ahead and I'll do a little bit of an introduction to how the project came about, why we're doing this project, a little bit about sort of some of the issues that this project is addressing. And then I'll turn it over to Mukunzi, and he'll present the project and the results. And I'm happy to entertain questions at the end. So I taught IS 1100 in a learning community with Dr. Corinne Hinton. And she taught composition, I taught general psychology. And it was in a semester when the topic and the reading for IS 1100 was around psychology, so it worked out really well. Mukunzi was one of the students in that learning community. So he was in my general psychology, he was also in my IS 1100. And he came along to me about halfway through the semester and said, hey, would you like to do an honors project with me? That was something I didn't know anything about, but I learned relatively quickly what that involved. And I was a little bit skeptical because here was a electrical engineering student, not a psychology student, coming and wanting to do a project involving psychology. So, but I was also intrigued because any student who's motivated enough, sharp enough, bright enough to want to take that on in their first semester at the university was somebody who I probably wanted to get involved with. So I said, okay, let's start looking for a project. And because Mukunzi didn't have a lot of experience with psychology, I really needed to find kind of a turnkey project where he wouldn't have to design the methodology. He wouldn't have to, really try to come up with a research question in psychology and so on, but rather he could get involved relatively quickly in being part of a collaborative research project that turned out to be not only interesting, but also published research. So this collaboration between Mukunzi and I resulted not only in him learning a lot about research methodology, learning a lot about how research is conducted, and how to look at, analyze, and present research, but also led to me having a publication credit and also the ability for my whole lab to be involved in a research project that was presented at actually, now this is, I think, the fourth presentation of these data to very different audiences. One was to the Great Plains Honors Conference, and that was presented by our other honors student who couldn't be here today. And then Mukunzi is presenting it here and also presented it for the Texas Undergraduate Research Day. Just to give you an idea of what our lab is like, we have 3 to 4 students, undergraduates, working in my lab every semester. We run somewhere between usually 3 or maybe 4 studies per semester, and sometimes they go multiple semesters. In fact, this project started in 1 semester and carried over into the following semester as well. And this results in about 2 to 3 presentations or publications per year. So my students are able to work in a team environment, learning a lot of really important workplace skills like team processes, working with other individuals who are very diverse, being able to analyze information, being able to synthesize information, being able to run a complete project, which is essentially what Mukunzi did. So it's a really, really exciting opportunity for my undergraduates to be involved in what is probably one of the most authentic sort of experiences they may have in the university. This project is what we call a replication study. And I need to talk a little bit about why we do replication studies. In science, typically what we want to do is we want to make new discoveries. We want to understand new information, new processes. And it has typically in psychology been frowned upon to go back and see if we can confirm what we have already discovered. But what we have run into in the last about 15 years or so is what we are calling the reproducibility crisis. And what we're finding is that in psychology, many of the results that have been published in the literature fail to replicate or be able to be reproduced by other researchers. And this is causing a big problem because now we are beginning to question the robustness of our research literature. So for example, in 2015, 100 different studies were replicated from top-tier psychology journals. 38 of those actually did replicate. The remaining 2/3 essentially failed to replicate. That should send shivers through your spine if you're a psychologist. And even when they did replicate, the size of the effect that we saw in the experiment was about half of the original. So it wasn't even as powerful as it was originally published. Psychology was one of the first disciplines to start to understand this and to start to try to address it. But it's not just psychology. We see it, for example, in other social sciences, economics, for example. We see it across social science publications in prestigious journals like Science and Nature, some of the best journals in the field. Political science has found a similar problem, and even biomedicine and pharmaceutical sciences have also found problems with replication and reproducibility. And so what we're really understanding is it's more than just one discipline. There's something about the way that we're doing the science. So that led us to try to understand how we got to this position. How did we get to a situation where we can't reproduce existing research? Well, one of the problems is that researchers have been making decisions in their experiments and in the conduct of their research after they've designed the research, and even sometimes after they have collected the data. They may look at their data and they will do what's called harking, hypothesizing after the results are known. And this is a basic cognitive process that people have called the hindsight bias. When we look back on our prior behavior, knowing what we know now, we look back and we say, oh, of course, I should have known that, or I would have known that at the time. And usually we don't know it at the time. And so what we have found out is that some researchers will actually say that they had a hypothesis after they've collected the data that they didn't. In some cases, they will look at their analysis. They will say, oh, gee, I don't have statistically significant results, so I'll collect a few more participants. And then they look at the results, and lo and behold, it turns out to be statistically significant. So now it's publishable research. And we call that p-hacking, because p refers to the p-value, which is the probability that the results that you're getting are due to chance or some other factor other than the influence of the independent variable that you're manipulating. And really, what we want to do as scientists is to put our best feet forward. So what we do is we selectively have reported our results. So we might have done 10 different studies. 9 of them failed to confirm the hypothesis, but we changed things every time. And finally, that 10th study did. We don't publish all 9 of the failures to confirm. We publish the 10th, which does confirm our hypothesis. And so what this results in is an underrepresentation in the literature of failures to confirm hypotheses. But these researchers are not doing this because they're bad people or bad scientists. Usually there are lots of pressures from the institution or the field. And so, for example, even graduate students that are coming out of graduate school, in order to be competitive for good jobs, need to have several publications in top-tier journals. And so there's a heavy emphasis on getting those publications. And prestigious journals want new and surprising results that are counterintuitive. And so there's a drive, an incentive to perhaps use methodologies in our research that result in not really getting accurate data in the publications, but getting publications. Finally, journal editors don't want to publish failures to confirm hypotheses. They don't want to publish what we call negative results. And so we are encouraged to find positive results, to find statistically significant results. And as soon as we do, get them published. When we get lots of research teams working on hot topics, for example, Alzheimer's is very hot right now. Lots of research teams doing lots of studies, ignoring a lot of negative results in their failures to confirm their hypotheses, and only publishing what is confirmed, what does confirm their hypotheses. So this has resulted in our trying to understand how to fix this problem. And one of the ways we're doing it is through what we call open science. Through open science, what we do is we pre-register our hypotheses, our data analysis, we pre-register any exclusions we're going to do, how we're going to do our sample sizes. Then when we collect our data, we make that data open and available for other people to reanalyze later. That helps to keep us honest. And in addition, we publish our materials so that people can easily replicate our research and to study it again. One of the ways that we've been doing this also is through what's called registered reports. And essentially what this does is it blinds the publication process to the results of the research. And instead, the decision to publish the research is based on the strength of the methodology and the strength of the argument that the researchers are making. So this results in a two-stage publication process. In stage one, the researchers submit their hypotheses, they submit their data analysis plans, and so on. The editors of the journal send that submission out for review. The reviewers look at the methodology, they look at the data analysis plan, they say, yes, this is solid research, this is going to be good research, this is important research, we should publish this. At that point, the editor sends out what's called an in-principle acceptance. And here now, the journal has committed to publishing this research no matter what the results are, no matter whether they confirm the hypothesis or disconfirm the hypothesis. That then is time-stamped in a repository so that the researchers are going to be held to that in-principle acceptance, and they conduct the research according to that IPA. In stage two, the manuscript is then submitted back to the journal with the results and discussion section, and is reviewed then by either the same reviewers and or additional reviewers. And they don't focus on the results. They don't focus on whether the results confirmed the hypotheses. They focus instead on whether the researchers complied with the in-principle acceptance and the strength of the conclusions that they make. And most importantly, the editors can't then reject the research because it's not exciting and something that they want to put in their journal, right? So this reduces a lot of opportunity for bias, normal cognitive biases in humans that lead to poor decisions. So it reduces bias for researchers, it reduces bias for reviewers, it reduces bias for editors. It also reduces publication bias. And this is where we have had an overrepresentation in the literature of confirmations of hypotheses. So you may ask, is this working? Well, we have some good preliminary data that shows that it is. So in this graph on the left-hand side, you see standard research practices that result in over 90%, 95% of studies that support the hypotheses of the original research. On the right-hand side, you see the registered reports. And what you're seeing here is only about half, less than half, of the published registered reports support their hypotheses. The other half are publishing failures to support the hypothesis. And that's what we need in the literature. That's what we haven't had. So when we look at the likelihood that we could get the results in the left-hand side, it's very implausible and it's contradicted by evidence. Any of you who do research, if you confirm your hypotheses at 90% rate, then you're doing really good. You're doing a whole lot better than me, because usually for me, it's the other way around. About 10% of my hypotheses are confirmed. So an unbiased literature would look very different from the literature we have today. So all of this introduction leads me to the present research, the project that Mukunzi worked on for our lab. And the developer of this project was Randy McCarthy at Northern Illinois University. And he brought together a whole team of collaborating laboratories. He, along with some initial co-authors, put together their in-principle acceptance and stage one manuscript in summer of 2018. That was accepted, and he put out a call for collaborators, which I saw about the same time that Mukunzi came to me and said, hey, I've got this cool project. Could you work on me with this honors project? So what we have now is a collaborative team of researchers, 28 different labs in 11 countries, mostly in North America and Europe. Those then collected their data, submitted the data to the research team at NIU. Then the stage two manuscript was written reviewed in November. It got a revise and resubmit, and it was finally accepted in December. And so that publication is now in the literature. Mukunzi is one of the co-authors, as am I. So this is a really exciting situation that Mukunzi and I got involved in. We were able to be part of an international research team that was looking at an important question, which Mukunzi will explain a little bit more about. So I'll turn it over to Mukunzi.
Well, thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I would first of all like to thank Dr. Leighton for letting me be part of his lab and give his time for me to be on a journey to ask important questions. So thank you for that. About this study, this hostile priming effect study was the most cited in social cognition. It was cited more than 1,000 times in academic publication. So the theory was, if a person is exposed to stimuli, they will perceive the ambiguous action of others as hostile. So this application was, as I said, about 28 international labs across 11 countries. Each lab completed closed application and conceptual application as well, to make sure that they were working together to see if the original study was conclusive in the claim they were saying. So our lab, which was in study 1, was to locally design a stimuli that we can use to make sure that the standard practices were followed. So what we did was, first of all, recruit a participant between 18 and 24 years old on campus throughout different classes, so that way they can be involved. The first participant were in close replication, which was we did as much as possible to make sure that the original environment and the same group people were involved in the group in our first case. And then the second case was conceptual replication, which meant that the words that they used in the study were locally sourced. That means that we came up with our own. So participant will use computer to unscramble phrases that were either hostile or non-hostile, and then read a brief vignette. So the example of a hostile sentence that they had to discover was, "He hit his face." And then the other non-aggressive was, "wash the clothes." And that these phrases, they will describe them based on the vignette that they were given. And then the vignette, the summary of it was, a man named Donald who behaved ambiguously hostile manner. They will rate his personality traits to 0 to 10, from 0 being non-hostile, 10 to being a very hostile. So they also, rated several ambiguity behaviors of other vignettes. That was one of the examples. So the total participant on the Texas A&M lab was 74. In total, the second study for the multi, collaborative was about 1,400 for the closed application, and then 1,600 for the conceptual application. So then the data was, combined to represent in a graph. Next slide. This bold line. So this is the data for our lab. The whole style, what they found, the words that they found to be hostile was about 10 participants. And then control group that was given neutral words was about 9. So as you can see, the data was presented. But in our first study, what we found, both conceptual and direct replication kind of failed to, present the significant effect to our original study, meaning that both control and hostile primary condition were not statistically different. In doing a meta-analysis, the overall sizes was about 0.6 for close application and 0.9 for the conceptual application, which you can see in a graph presented. The next slide, hopefully. The bold line, the one that is middle of the graph, presented that from either conceptual to the close application. So in a way that these different labs concluded that they were not significant, that we can see the results contributing to the original findings. So the current results then raise the question, why was the hostile priming effect not detected, despite the very best we could have done by using statistically analysis software that we could find the best ones, making sure that participants were aware and very attentive to what they were doing, and then suspicious probes, making sure that they didn't have any prior knowledge of of what they're doing, that if they knew what they were doing before come to the the lab, then that would compromise the data. And then if we found those suspicious, then we'll remove the data because they will not be helping. And then the control lab environment was to make sure that there was no disturbance outside, so it was very quiet, and then there was no other person in the lab to disturb them except the lab assistant that was in the room. The effect, as I said, it did not emerge to create a favorable condition, even using a larger sample from the 28 labs that was concluding the results. So hostile priming effect, as I say, was the most influential in social cognition. It was cited more than 1,000 times in academic publication. So we hope to find the same results, but as a future researcher in different field, I learned to put aside anything that can interfere with the results, as I wanted to make sure that we could find the favorable, say, hey, we did it, we found the sire and wire was correct, we did it, but we couldn't find any supporting evidence. So we had to make sure that we were not tampering with the data to make sure that supporting the hypothesis. Other than that, I had to work to to get exposure with collecting data and then analyzing the data. And then I started to collaborate with other assistant lab assistant to make sure that the tools were there for me to use and interact with larger data samples. So if anyone has a question, I think that would be the time.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Wonderful. If anyone does have any questions, if you want to stop sharing, we can kind of go back to our wonderful little Zoom, our Zoom box view, as it were. So yeah, if folks have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can use the little raise hand feature if you want, or if your video's on, you can physically raise your hand or make whatever sign you wish. Yeah. So I'll give you some time to think about it. The problem might be me, because I often say the same in my classes, and they don't want to as well. Here we go. There you go. All right. Yes. Dr. Chen, if you want to ask.
Hello? Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Great. I will not ask a specific question about the paper. I'm very interested in the IS 100 class. I try to recruit undergraduate students who are interested in my research project, but I feel difficult to recruit students. Like Dr. Leighton, you are very good at recruit undergraduate students. You have 4 in your labs. Fantastic. Just tell us how the IS 100 class works. Now, how can you recruit the undergraduate student into your research project?
Right. My main, I didn't do any sort of recruitment in that class specifically. But what I do for recruitment, and Mukunzi, really, this was his own intrinsic motivation to seek out an honors project advisor. So, well, I suppose there was some extrinsic motivator too, Dr. Nakashian. But when I do recruitment, I send out an email to all of the psychology majors, and I describe the lab, and I send them to an application form that they can fill out. And I don't get a lot of applications either. I'm not sure maybe if students don't understand the value or importance of research, undergraduate research. It is one of the most important factors if you're going to apply certainly for PhD programs. That's one of the main things they look for in psychology, and also even in some of the master's programs. So I don't have a good question about how to recruit lots of people. I teach research methods. So when I find somebody who's doing well in that class, I tend to, talk to them about research, talk to them about the importance of doing research if they're going to apply for grad school. And so that tends to help quite a bit.
Yeah, I try to approach a student who are good in my class, but I ask them, most of them work full-time out of campus.
Yeah, I know. This breaks my heart. The students that oftentimes need it the most are the students that are so busy working and taking care of families and everything else that our students oftentimes have to do, that it makes it really difficult for them to commit the time to doing research in the lab. But in psychology, one of the things that we do is I run an independent study class. And so they can get 3 credits of academic credit in exchange for working in the lab and being a research assistant. So that helps a little bit, because then that can replace one of the classes they would normally take for their upper division psychology credit.
Okay,
Excellent.
thank you for your suggestion.
Thank you. I'm going to ask just a very quick question. This is kind of more, well, I don't know how to frame it, but did you get feedback, or what was the reception when you presented this for the Texas Undergraduate Research Day?
No, we didn't get any feedback at all.
Virtual.
I think Mukunzi was ill, and so he couldn't actually present. I don't think we submitted a video, so I think we just had the poster. So maybe that was why, but I didn't get any feedback at all.
Yeah, I know that they were doing it, virtually, so I didn't know how it actually worked, but yeah.
So, but when Caitlin Smith, my other honors student who worked on this project, she presented at the Great Plains Honors Conference, and we got a few questions from the people that were in the session for that, and the reception was good. She did a great job, yeah, as well.
Yeah. Very good, very good. Yeah, I mean, to Dr. Chen's point, the part of why we try to incentivize in the honors program that focus on the projects is, yeah, because undergraduate research is it's one of those things that in theory anyone can do. Like, you don't need the honors program to do that, but in providing that structure and that incentive, it helps us kind of build part of that culture as well. But it also depends on the field. If we've in history, students wanting to do original research in medieval sources might be a little, yeah, we don't have an archive or anything, but we can do it. We just have to be creative. But I'd like to think it fits for all fields. So anyhow, sorry. Other questions, feedback, comments, anything from the group? I know we're getting closer to the 1 o'clock class hour, but we still have time. Okay, well, I will go ahead and stop the recording now. We can certainly still keep chatting if we want, but let's go ahead and thank Dr. Leighton and Mukunzi. Thank you very much. I will applaud properly. You can make your applause at home as you see fit, or what have. Thank you. I got a little applause. Job and thumbs up. That's excellent. But thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week for our last honors colloquium of the semester on the 27th. Dr. Hogan talking about chemistry. Yeah, so fun times. Thank you.